What is up, y'all? I am Chili. Welcome back to my channel. This video is part 2 of my insane rambling about the Void Within plot, and if you missed part 1, that goes over the plot itself and some predictions for it. This one is going to be covering past plots that we've done in Neopia on Neopets together as a family, and now I think they're going to integrate in with this current Void Within plot. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the Champions of Meridel. Champions of Meridel was a pretty groundbreaking plot because it was the first time that we had a two-sided war within Neopets. And it's also the first plot that brought with it avatars, baby! We got some fucking avatars for this plot, hell yes! Also introduced us to the lands of Meridel and the Darrigan Citadel. So, fucking big deal, a lot going on. The plot begins with our 4 friends, Leisha, Kayla, Morris, and Boris, playing a D&D style tabletop game called NeoQuest. Leisha's magic accidentally transports them into their very own isekai-style adventure. They're dumped out into Meridel, where they're confronted by the guards, and they get thrown right into a battle with some Darrigan monsters. They're able to help the guards fend off the Darrigans, and they are brought into the throne room to talk to King Skarl himself. Skarl is very skeptical about their story until Sir Jaren relates that he went through a similar journey when he was brought to this world, so he encourages King Skarl to believe them. Skarl then weaves a tale for us about how Meridel used to be under a terrible famine, until they went out on an adventure to find this magical orb, which had restored prosperity and peace to their lands. We are soon to find out, however, that King Skarl is not being genuine with this story. The orb wasn't so much as discovered as it was stolen, fucking stolen, from another thriving kingdom called the Darrigan Citadel. We find out that these attacking creatures are none other than the Darrigan people themselves, trying so hard to restore the magical orb that kept their city in prosperity all these years. You know, the one that Skarl fucking stole from them. He stole it. Previously, Darrigan Citadel was a thriving utopia. They knew nothing of war or famine or needing for resources. Their civilization thrives until one day the aggressors of Meridel come and steal the orb from them. What a fucking dick move. This dick-headed move of Christopher Columbian proportions plunged the Darrigan Citadel into darkness. Their crops withered, their people died from hideous diseases, and they even over time mutated into the monsters that we see today from the Darrigan Citadel. War wages between the two factions, and for some reason Hubert Knox randomly pops up and aids the Darrigan Citadel. That's not really ever explained. But they're able to recover their orb, and Darrigan brings it back to his throne room at the Citadel. Something is different about the orb, though. It doesn't immediately start to heal the people like Darrigan expected. He beseeches the orb and suddenly his eyes flash an evil color, and his mood immediately changes. He's like, fuck it, they can starve. Like, not even let him eat cake, just like, fuck these bitches. We don't exactly know how, but somehow the orb was corrupted by dark fairies that we know now are called the Three. They warp Lord Darrigan's mind and they convince him to use the power of the orb for himself. He then focuses all of his energy on destroying the town of Meridel. The Yellow Knight, who is being held captive in Hex's dungeon, is able to break free, and when him and Master Hex discover Lord Darrigan's crazy fucking Belrog none-shall-pass form up in his citadel, they defect and they begin to start working together to try to merge their armies, unilaterally deciding that Darrigan is a threat to everybody now and that he needs to be stopped. All of the armies now encroach on Darrigan, who is this badass fucking fire demon, and their combined might is enough to overpower him, causing him to disappear into a flash of light. The magical orb, before anybody could jump on it and claim it, split in half, removing its power from the land. With the immediate cause of conflict gone, Meridel and the Darrigan Citadel are able to form an uneasy truce, but as we know, that truce was pretty quickly shattered just literally a year later in the next plot, the Battle for Meridel. Since these two plots are so similar, I'm going to finish my synopsis of that one first, and then we're going to talk about how it applies to the Void Within. So, you know, fuckle the book up, man. Here we go. The Battle for Meridel picks up just a year after the Champions of Meridel, where Meridel and Darrigan Citadel are observing an uneasy truce between the two of them. If you remember, Darrigan was removed from power at the end of the last plot, leaving a vacuum within the Citadel that was filled by his former general, Lord Cass. Cass began to not only restructure the government, but to attempt to rewrite history, removing all mentions of former Lord Darrigan, while manipulating the people of the Darrigan Citadel into hating the people of Meridel. He even imprisoned the people that did not agree with him. Knowing what we just discussed in the previous plot, I almost feel like Cass is a little bit vindicated in his hatred towards King Skarl. But vilifying the entirety of the people of Meridel, I feel like is definitely a mistake and not conducive towards creating peace towards their two kingdoms. Turning our attention to North Meridel, a strange bat-like creature is discovered in the farmlands. The creature is soon rescued from death at the hands of a farmer named Sally, a little Usul who is feeding him her table scraps and nursing him back to health. Back at the Citadel, we see Cass giving his people an impassioned speech about the dangers of Meridel and of King Skarl in general, and how their only option is going to war. At this point, Cass is a ruthless dictator. He punishes anyone who disagrees with him. We see the effects of the socio-economic state of the Darrigan Citadel in things throughout Neopian history, like the creation of the game Cass Basher. It's obvious that his people were not happy with him at the time, but they were too afraid to say anything and try to rise up against him. Meanwhile, we get our first glimpse into Cass's madness. He has some visions that are prompted by spirits known as the Three. These are the same dark fairies that took over the orb and corrupted Darrigan. We don't really know their origin or how they kind of enter the story, they sort of just pop up, but we know that they are representative of evil beings who utilize power to manipulate people with status and authority. Their goals almost seem more catered to the means that people go through, not necessarily the ends that they encounter. So kind of like encouraging evil for the sake of evil, and that's how they gain their power. At least that's what my suspicion has always been. We see a more sensitive and sad boy side of Cass as he's begging them to give him another chance and believe that he is worthy. They torment him, telling him that his people deserve revenge against King Skarl, and that he's just not showing enough ambition. Cass reveals that he will do anything for power and begs them not to take it away from him, and honestly, Amanda, I see why you think that you can fix him. Like, if anybody can, baby girl, it's you. You got this. Finally, they threaten Cass, telling him that if he fails the way that Darrigan did, his punishment will be 10 times worse. So this sort of gives us some context into what is fueling Cass forward and making him make all of these really ruthless decisions. It's not just about his people getting revenge, which is definitely something that drives him, but he is in danger of being destroyed by these 3 bad bitches, and I mean, anybody who's ever had their life destroyed by one bad bitch knows how serious this is. In a false act of peace, Cass sends a gift over to Lord Skarl in the form of a court dancer. He says that he hopes that this gift will help the peace between their two lands. She's up in there working her thing and breaking her back off for the glory of Lord Cass and the Darrigan Citadel, and girl, it worked. She bewitches Skarl's entire court. It's a very like Judith going into Holofernes' camp kind of thing, except for we don't actually get to see King Skarl get decapitated, which is kind of too bad. I know he's supposed to be like the good guy in this story, but he's a dick. Orb stealing bitch, people don't forget. We see Jaren Borodir being an absolute hunky badass, leading his troops on the front line, but he's starting to get overwhelmed, and King Skarl is not sending him any reinforcements. I mean, Skarl's in the club with his homies trying to get a little BI. Keep it down on the low key, Jaren, like he's not out here trying to do war. The court dancer's curse begins to spread throughout the land, and even the farmers begin to turn against Jaren and his forces. It's starting to look helpless for them. Jaren's troops fall back into the haunted woods. The Darrigan soldiers push forward, and they eventually encroach upon Sally's farm. It's starting to get a little bit crusade-y up in here, and that gets Mr. Scary very pissed off. He launches himself at the Darrigan guard, and something in his memory is jogged. He gets this wonderful anti-amnesia moment where he stands upright and declares that he is Darrigan. He has survived his supposed destruction in the Champions of Meridel, and with his memory restored, he is off to do his part in stopping the war. Back at King Skarl's nasty fuck palace, Lisha has a truly Pied Piper of Hamelin moment and discovers that she is actually immune to the court dancer's spell. In a trope that will be echoing throughout the eternities of all of the plots of Neopia, she breaks off to a library to go and find a solution to the spell. Now I say that because in every other plot we have this repeated pattern of somebody that needs to break away from a group to go to a library to find the solution to the spell. And honestly, I'm just 150% here for it. Like, I absolutely stan an intellectual bitch that's gonna go find an answer in a book. We should all read more. Read more books. Okay, back to the plot. Lisha uses her big sexy brain to undo the transformation spell that is on the court dancer. But Skarl only gets down with 10s, so the trance is broken, and he immediately orders his armies to go to the front lines and to reinforce Jaren. Kayla mixed up some potions for the assault. Everyone had their part, except, of course, Morris and Boris. Jaren told them that they had to stay behind, but Boris insisted that King Skarl said that they were knights and they should be involved in the invasion as well. Being the little Merry and Pippins that they are, they take some vanishing potion and they follow behind the army. Cass's war machines encroach on Meridel. Skarl sends orders to pull his entire army back and to defend the south, and Cass sends his entire army to meet them. He and Morgus, the malevolent Mohawk mage, try to say that 3 times fast, defend the citadel. Morgus was also a servant of Lord Darrigan, and Morgus is credited with creating the first zombie pets during this second war of Meridal with their disgusting magic. Morgus was also the mother of the court dancer who was sent to King Skarl to shake her thing for her people. She stays safely up in the Citadel and releases torrents of supernovas onto the armies of Meridal as they attack the Citadel of Darrigan. Jaren and his forces launch an aerial assault and immediately lose this red shirt Bloomaroo, whose name I couldn't find anywhere. Put it in the comments if you know who he is. R.I.P. Justice for red shirt Bloomaroo. Lord Cass shows up at the top of the Citadel and launches into an epic battle with Jaren. He gets knocked to the side and comes to seeing Morris and Boris standing over top of his body trying to defend him. As Cass raises his sword to slay our hero, Morris and Boris jump on Lord Cass, making him drop his sword. Cass tosses them off of him, almost throwing Boris over the edge. Jaren is able to save Boris, but he turns around to see that Danner is about to be thrown off of the edge as well. This distracts him for just long enough for Cass to come up behind him and to shove him over the edge. There's a lot of edging going on right now. I mean, I'm on the edge of glory and I'm hanging on a moment with you. Jaren goes the way of Mufasa in the water buffalo scene, and everybody's fucking heart breaks. With Jaren taken care of, Cass turns his sights onto Morris and Boris and says, "King Skarl sends children against me? How pathetic." Danner turns, and in an act of heroism, he chucks his sword at Lord Cass. It proves to only be effective in stunning him for just a moment, though, and Cass picks the sword up and he knocks Danner unconscious, telling his little crony to throw him over the edge so he can join his commander. But then suddenly, up from the edge, like a gargoylin hero motherfucker, here comes Lord Darrigan. He and Cass reunite on the Darrigan Citadel and they enter a battle of epic proportion. Former leader versus current leader. No holds barred. For the belt. Tables, ladders, and chairs, baby, let's fucking go. In their little scuffle kerfuffle, Darrigan is able to knock the amulet loose from Cass's neck, and then he smashes it. And in a puff of green smoke, we hear the voices of the three saying, "You failed us, Cass. We knew you would, and we weren't disappointed." No stranger to corruption himself, Darrigan saw that within Cass. He knew that he had to help his old friend in the way that he was helped, by freeing his mind, like Morpheus. Cass runs away to go cry in a corner, and Lord Darrigan picks up Danner, saying that they have to go shut down the engines of the Citadel or it'll explode. In a fit of rage and sadness that I can only compare to the kid on Tosh.0 that tried to shove the remote up his ass, Cass runs into a wall and falls down crying about the three. The three vow to take everything from him, and they explode him into a puff of black smoke and formally hands him soot. Where did he go? Did he go to the void? I don't know. You tell me. I really want to know. Will you please tell me? Where did he go? With Lord Cass defeated, his forces all surrender, and Darrigan is able to take control of the Citadel once more. Darrigan takes his troops into the engine room, and with a grand doo-doo-doo-doo, the engines shut down and restart. The three make their presence known to Darrigan and offer him greatness, to which he responds, "I don't need you bitches anymore," and they vanish. In the end, Skarl, being the motherfucker that he is, he took credit for everything, once again cementing himself as a hero, even though we all know he's a colonizing, thieving motherfucker. It's revealed that when Jaren was tossed off the Citadel, he was actually caught by the air ferry and brought back to Skarl's kingdom. Why was this saved for like an entire day? I don't know. Drama, I guess? But luckily Jaren is brought back to life and reunited with Lisha. Oh hey, record scratch moment. So I may have oversimplified this story way too much by not covering the fact that Jaren is somehow Lisha's long-lost brother, who when they were kids they were playing hide and seek, and he somehow in this old castle like tumbled into a fucking wormhole and he got brought back into Meridal, and that's how he became Skarl's champion in the first place. And so like when they see each other, they are sort of like reuniting as brother and sister. Yeah, I think that I really fucked up, and I didn't realize that I didn't mention that until now, and I'm already like 15 minutes into this recording, so we're just gonna Tarantino the story a little bit. I'm so sorry. But yeah, they're brother and sister. They're reunited. Hooray. Yay! They're not together. Please don't ship them. So on record scratch. They have a peace treaty that is signed between the Darrigan Citadel and Meridal, one that is still in existence to this time, and they say that it will last throughout 1,000 years. So that ends the Champions of Meridal and the Battle of Meridal plot. So let's talk about how those two past plots may tie into the Void Within. For me, it leaves behind two gigantic question marks, and those question marks are Lord Darrigan and Lord Cass. I feel like Lord Darrigan's character very much represents like doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. Darrigan didn't go out and intentionally make a pact with dark fairies or with the three to try to gain power. He was just trying to utilize that same orb that before had given his people so much power and prosperity, without it coming with the gamble of having to like sacrifice his little Neopian soul. That being said, we do know that Lord Darrigan is easily influenced by evil power when promises are made to him that has to do with taking care of his people. So he sort of seems to be willing to make small bargains to give parts of himself for the greater good of his own kingdom, sometimes even at his own detriment. My concern is that he may be unwillingly convinced to enter into another pact like he was with the three within the orb. He doesn't seem the type to make a Faustian bargain, but he's definitely been in that sort of slippery slope of ethics, where he moves his slider over more and more and more until he eventually is unrecognizable as the person that he used to be. My possible connection for him is that it is possible for the Void to be able to corrupt him, just like his shiny orb did. We love our guy, but he is a cautionary tale in evil orb ownership and management. Now, Cass, on the other hand, I feel like is more reminiscent of doing the right thing for the wrong reason. Cass's motivations and desires were so deeply in line with the three. I think that's one of the things that made him so corruptible. His big drivers were along the lines of revenge and greed and wrath. Unlike Lord Darrigan, Cass did make a Faustian deal with the three, knowingly serving them and utilizing them as a channel to greater power and wealth. I often tend to give Lord Darrigan a pass when it comes to his evil deeds, but I think that Lord Cass was a lot more complicit in his. When I look at his Neopets wiki article, it does say that he eventually became power hungry due to the influence of the three, and that Cass was one of the generals that stood against Lord Darrigan when the orb had corrupted him to try to end that corruption and bring peace back to the Darrigan Citadel. We know that Cass was the one that took over power when Darrigan disappeared, but that doesn't necessarily make him an evil or a power hungry person. It means that he was just trying to restore order to the Citadel. So the question for me really lies in what was the turning point for Cass and when did he become power hungry? Did he make the deal with the three because he was power hungry and he wanted more? Or did he make the deal with the three much in the way that Lord Darrigan unwittingly did with the orb? If his motivations were merely to restore his people to their former glory and to end their suffering, it's really hard to fault him for that. But if his motivations were seated deeply in revenge and in gaining power, that's where we can start to see him slide the scale over more to being a villain than a hero. Cass is the hugest question mark for me, and I'm so interested to see how he is utilized, if he is utilized in this plot. Please fucking utilize Cass in this plot. I could see this becoming a huge redemption arc for him where him and Lord Darrigan team up to fight against the forces of evil, knowing that they have both been corrupted in the past. To me, this almost seems like two addiction survivors that are teaming up together to be able to help other people overcome that, and that is such a beautiful story, and I really hope that they touch on it. Void only knows what's going to happen, but let's go ahead and push forward and talk about the next plot that I think may have some interaction with the Void Within. Next up, we have the Fairies' Ruin and the Fall of Fairyland. We enter the story at the Fairy Festival, where all of the fairies of Neopia have mysteriously been turned to stone. An Ixie thief named Hanzu is seen poking around, trying to steal their necklaces and rifling through bags. His little looting session is interrupted by King Altador, King Jazin, and Bryn. They question what Hanzo is doing at the Fairy Festival, and he confesses that he saw the warlock Hubert Knox up to no good. He claims that he was taking a walk by the Fairy Festival and that he saw Hubert Knox pull out a mirror-like artifact and cast a spell. He held it up and a bright light flashed, and suddenly all of the fairies were petrified. This guard is like, "But how did you know that they was scared?" And honestly, never change, Castle Guard, I love you. Jazin and Altador are not buying it. They decide to go talk to Xandra, who is a Fairyland scholar, to see if they can make heads or tails of Hanzu's story. Upon entering, Xandra immediately identifies Hanzu as an Ixie who had previously robbed her hut. She tells King Altador that he shouldn't believe anything that Hanzu says. Hanzu then admits that, well, maybe he didn't tell the whole story before. He was taking a walk by the Fairy Festival, but he was actually on his way to fence some stolen goods that he had previously stolen from Xandra's hut. You see, the buyer for these goods was Hubert Knox, and Hubert had asked him to meet him in Fairyland. Hanzo was a little suspicious of what Hubert Knox would be doing in Fairyland, so after selling him the artifact, he ended up following him, and that is where he saw Hubert cast the spell that petrified the fairies. King Altador can see only one option to this. They have to go confront Hubert Knox head-on. Our party reaches Knox's castle without any incident, but as Altador goes to plan his attack, Hanzo decides to break away and try to sneak into the castle by himself. He gets followed by Bryn. Inside the castle, Hanzo was found pretty quickly by Hubert Knox, who surprisingly didn't recognize him. As Hanzu rolls his charisma check again and again and tries to push Hubert Knox for information, outside of his castle, Xandra trips one of Hubert Knox's traps. This alerts Knox to the army outside of his palace. Altador has no other choice. He orders the remaining heroes to storm the castle, but unfortunately they encounter more traps and many of them end up getting sealed inside of rooms in the castle as well. Knox distracts Hanzu and escapes through a secret passageway. Bryn is angry at Hanzo, blaming him for allowing Hubert Knox to get away. As Hanzo and Bryn pursue him, they discover the control device for his traps, forcing them to call off their pursuit to go help their friends in need. With our heroes all occupied on saving their friends, Hubert makes his escape through the woods. However, he soon comes across an exact duplicate of himself, but it bars his path, and when he goes toe-to-toe with it, it actually attacks him, zapping him with powerful magic and supposedly killing him on the spot. R.I.P. Hubert Knox. We're gonna make t-shirts with you up in the clouds and everything, don't you worry. This next part is not in the comics for some reason, but it is represented on the Book of Ages, so I wanted to talk about it. Around the same time, a young fairy Ixie named Layla sets off from Fairyland to conduct her own investigation into helping the fairies. But instead of visiting Knox, she goes to beseech Balthazar. Balthazar is the bounty hunter who is responsible for bottling all the fairies that we see on the Neopian market. So if you are purchasing bottled fairies, they are not harvested ethically and you need to stop. Layla had heard that the bottled fairies that Balthazar sold were not turning to stone. They seemed to be immune to the magic that had claimed the rest of them. Unfortunately, she discovered that the bottled fairies are only protected while they're trapped. As soon as they were released, they turned to stone anyways. When Balthazar hears her plea, he insists that she takes him to Fairyland so that he can see this for himself. Unbeknownst to Layla, our guy Balthazar has a little bit of trauma that's associated with the dark fairies. See, when he was a pup, he got lost in the woods, and he happened upon some dark fairies and asked them for help. And being dark fairies, our little goth baddies that we love so much, rather than actually helping him, what they did was throw rocks and sticks at him and spit at him and probably put chewing gum in his fur and maybe try to clip his toenails, because I know that dogs hate that. So Layla, sweet summer child that she is, took Balthazar to Fairyland hoping that he would help his sworn enemies, but instead Balthazar just stood there and laughed at them and then started to open his bottled fairies that he had collected to watch them turn to stone. So really not a solid plan, Layla. A for effort, baby girl, but like you ended up just kind of getting captured by Balthazar, and to what end? No wonder you weren't in the comic. Nobody will remember your name. Back at Nox's castle, our heroes manage to solve the puzzles and to escape. They reunite with Xandra and the kings outside of the castle. They begin to strike camp, and there is a dialogue between Hanzu and Brynn, where she comments that she never should have trusted Hanzu in the first place, and how it was putting her career as a castle guard in jeopardy. As the group discusses what their next move should be, Hanzu notices some dark purple and very ominous clouds that are accruing around Fairyland. This provides our first insight as to what effect the lack of fairy magic is having on Fairyland and the rest of Neopia. As our heroes discuss this dire situation, strange shadow wraith creatures appear and they attack them. Our heroes fight wave after wave, slaying thousands of these creatures. Finally, there's a break in the action. Unsure how to move forward, Brynn suggests that Altador and the others create a diversion by attacking the raids, while she heads back to Brightvale in hopes of finding a cure for the fairies. They have a substantial library in Brightvale, and she is convinced that the answer lays somewhere in one of those books. And here we see that trope that I was talking about coming around again, where we have a character that has to go to a library to find the answer. I just love it. I just love it. The answer is always in books. Brynn is instructed that if she's returning to Brightvale, she is to take Hanzu with her and throw him in the dungeon. Xandra tags along with our duo, aiming to return to her hut in the haunted woods and to consult her own magical books. She casts doubt on Brynn's integrity as they walk together, saying that she knows that the two have a history together and questioning whether or not she will actually throw Hanzu in the dungeon. Xandra leaves the two as soon as they enter into Brightvale, and Brynn observes that the castle seems a little more gray than usual, as if some magic had been sucked out of it. They specifically mention that it looks like it had been painted with a gray paintbrush, and I feel like this is our first view at the gray that we start seeing with the Void, almost hinting at the fact that maybe the Void started to take effect way before we thought it did. I mean, this plot is 14 years old, so put that in your back pocket for later. Brynn locks Hanzo up in the castle dungeon, and she heads over to Phineas Gray Scrollbottom's auxiliary surplus archives. She is aided with the help of the new librarian in finding the correct book. Now pause for just a second, because this new librarian is somebody that we see working a different job now. He is actually currently the janitor at the Hall of Heroes. Okay, now put that in your back pocket too, because that's another fucking thing that I want to talk about here in just a minute. In searching through the library, she's able to locate that there is another artifact that pairs with this one, and she believes that maybe in using that second artifact, she can counteract the magic from the first. With her book in hand, she returns to the dungeons to show Hanzu the solution. However, on her way to the dungeon, a new batch of those shadow specters start to attack the city, so Brynn hands the book off to Hanzu for safekeeping, and she leaves to go fight them. Hanzu being Hanzu is like, fuck this, I'm not staying in this cell, and he escapes to join Brynn in battle. The two of them pretty quickly get overwhelmed, and Hanzu makes his quick escape from the castle, leaving Brynn behind. Hanzu then comes across a shadow creature in the forest, dragging Brynn into a cave. Brynn sees Xandra in the cave, who claims that she was also stolen by the Shades and dragged there. Hanzu follows in soon after, and the three hatch a plan to escape and breach the magical barrier that's surrounding the cave's entrance. Hanzu succeeds in rescuing the other cave occupants, and they all escape using Xandra's magic. Following a map that they found in the book from Brightvale, the three head towards a set of old ruins. Hanzo claims that these ruins were once a Thieves Guild base of operations, which he was a member of. They explore the ruins and they come across more of these shadowy creatures. While Bryn holds them off, Hanzo and Xandra locate the second mirror artifact, and the three make their escape. Xandra explains that the two artifacts are related, so the first one may be able to undo the magic of the second one. They head back to the Haunted Woods to reunite with the other heroes, but above them, fairyland begins to descend from the sky. Without the magic of the fairies, it is literally falling to the ground. The heroes leave the wood as Xandra says that she needs a wide open place to cast the spell. As Bryn and Hanzo help her hold the artifact, the others battle with the third wave of shadows. As they fight, more shadows appear and take their place. Eventually, the dead remains of the fallen shadows all join together and they create a being who calls himself Oblivion. Xandra finishes her spell with disastrous result. It rips through the clearing and it turns all of the heroes except for Hanzo, Bryn, and Xandra to stone. She throws another spell out around her to destroy the remaining shadows and she turns face to face with Hanzo. Fairyland crashes to the ground behind her. He sees her true colors. Xandra has been working against them the whole time. Oh my god, she's so fucking hot, look at her. In the aftermath of the crash, Xandra explains her motives. See, in her youth, she had been tutored in magic by the fairies, and she saw the full extent of their power. More importantly, she saw that sometimes they didn't use their powers to help the Neopians that were in need. She views the fairies as tyrants with this magical monopoly, and she wishes for them to be completely removed from Neopia. Do you remember that magical double of Hubert Knox? That was actually Xandra. She imprisoned and killed him, and she plans on ruling Neopia without the help of the fairies. The two artifacts that they had found boosted her magical ability, giving her the power that she needed to turn all of the fairies to stone. Xandra unites the two artifacts together and she gives Bryn and Hanzo a choice. They can either join her or they can die. Bryn instantly refuses, but Hanzo wants to hear her out a little bit. He ends up siding with her and he puts his hand out to shake with Xandra. But then he was like, "Psych, bitch!" And his deception was revealed very quickly as he stole one of the artifacts from Xandra. Xandra used the other half of the artifact to summon Oblivion again and try to keep Bryn occupied. She focused all of her magic on Hanzo, intending to turn him to stone as well. Hanzo defended himself with the stolen artifact, which gradually absorbed more and more of Xandra's magic. When it was charged with enough energy, Hanzo plunged a broken sword into its heart, smashing the mirror and releasing the magic stored within. The resulting magical flash petrified everything in the immediate area, turning both him and Xandra to stone. Bryn rejoiced at the defeat of Oblivion and then happened upon this terrible scene. With Xandra petrified, her magic began to erode. It freed all the other heroes and the fairies, and Fiora herself unpetrified Hanzo for his heroism. The fairies begin to rebuild their home, and Fiora took Xandra's statue into her care, hoping that she could rehabilitate her in time. She then bestowed upon Hanzo the title of Master Thief, and she appointed Bryn to be the captain of the guard in Fairyland. Together they were tasked with hunting down fairy artifacts that could eventually become dangerous. King Altador set out on a quest of his own. Apparently, when Fairyland crashed to the ground, the statue of the Darkest Fairy had mysteriously disappeared. And that ends the plot of The Fairy's Ruin. So, right off the grip, my number one thing is that Fiora said that she took Xandra's statue to try to rehabilitate her over time. Girl, it has been so long. What did you do with that statue? Like, are you just hanging your fucking bras on it? Like, what is happening? Look, even if Xandra is still a statue, I still think that she's going to be brought back. I think this badass babe has existed in her corporeal form in Fairyland in that statue, but that her energy has been still moving around in the void, and I think that she's been making big moves and doing badass bitch shit, and I don't think that we've heard the last from Xandra, not by a long shot. She is well suited now to want to seek vengeance, and that is exactly the kind of thing that the three look for in exploiting, so I think that she is well positioned to come back and continue her villain arc. I don't see much of a redemption arc for her because I don't think she's going to get over the social inequities that she sees within Neopia. Like, this is fundamental. You struggle on, little freedom fighter. My girl Xandra out here speaking truth to power, and I love that. I love an activist queen. But remember when I told you to put that gray in your back pocket? We'll take that bad boy out and unfold it because we're about to get into it. So knowing now at the end of the story that it was actually Xandra's magic that was influencing everything, it's so interesting to me that Brightveil turned gray. This is showcasing like environmental impact of Xandra's magic. It showcases like the spread of despair and like the loss of vitality in the region, and it affects both the land and its inhabitants. We're seeing that effect now in the Void Within, with a lot of the shopkeepers and King Scarl and Coltazan being gray. Could the gray be a symptom that showcases in Neopia when dark magic is afoot? Is it like when the toons in Toontown lose their silliness? And a second interesting parallel that I see here is the creation of the Shadow Wraiths. Xandra mentioned that the Shadow Wraiths were a byproduct of her dark magic. It was sort of an unintended benefit or consequence to the spells that she was casting. And like, not to totally oversimplify it, but bad magic make gray, bring shadow, right? If the wraiths are that physical manifestation of the corruption and the imbalance that's caused by these dark magic and spells and dark intent, then I could totally see the precedent being set for this rupture in the void and it coming into our world. These voidlings seem to be born from negative emotions and trauma, suggesting that great evil actions can unbalance the natural harmony and give rise to these kinds of entities. It was also, just like so casually mentioned, that King Altador had to go off on a quest to go find the Darkest Fairy statue because it is missing now after Fairyland fell out of the sky. That I feel like is going to have a big impact on this plot as well. I think that the Darkest Fairy is coming back. I think that she may even be one of the people that is working with Vera and the Mysterious Yerbal to be able to make these disappearances and the grayifications happen. And what are they doing? Why are they marching all through Neopia and where are they going to? I think that they're going to try to find Xandra's statue. I think that they're going to go free that girl. So that's my theory. They are marching to fucking Fairyland to get Xandra back. And they're going to depress all of the minimum wage making shopkeepers on the way. Capitalism, baby. I don't see a huge reason to bring Balthazar back, although he is kind of a fun character, and I know that a lot of people think that he's super handsome. But if there is a plot to fuck the fairies over, I can guarantee that Balthazar would want to be involved. So, like, make sure that you evite him, because he will RSVP yes. And this one is probably going to be my most unhinged thing that I've ever said, but I just cannot get it out of my mind. Is this Yerbal, like, in the Neopian Secret Service or something like that? Like, is this, like, Fiora's hidden guy? I feel like he pops up in so many of the plots, and he is involved in so many very important and very pivotal things, and then he just sort of fades into the background. Like, we don't even really know his name. We just know him as the angry janitor right now. Do you remember that I mentioned before that he was the new librarian when Bryn went looking for that book on the artifact? And he just happened to be like, oh, hey, look, here's the right book. Well, he's also the foreman in the Lost Desert plot, and the one that takes on the role of head chef and sends you off on that mission where you end up getting the useless crystal from him. And he was in the Altador plot for doing the Hall of Heroes quests. He's the angry janitor there. And he was involved in Festival of Negs. I just think that it's super interesting that he's involved in everything like this, and I wonder if he has any sort of connection to, or if he knows this mysterious Yerbal that we're talking about in the Void Within plot. I mean, like, not like all Yerbals know each other or anything like that. I just wonder. I wonder, okay? Also, shout out to his avatar, Forfeiter, which shows him, the foreman, and like his 3 different forms as foreman, chef, and janitor. Oh, chef's kiss. Love it. Oh my god, I just realized that he's actually also in the Wraith's Resurgence. Listen to this. It says, the Fairy Festival was a great success, but on the evening that it ended, the festival grounds were vandalized. Fiora offered a reward of 50,000 Neo points to anyone who could come forward. Jeez, deep pockets, girl. With information that was responsible. Eventually, the angry Yerbal responded to the call, revealing that he had seen who was responsible on his way home from visiting his friend. How was the angry Yerbal janitor involved in so many of these plots? TNT, we need answers. You can send them to me at angryyearbalconspiracytheory@neomail.com. However TNT decides to roll out this plot, one thing is for certain. I am so excited to be a part of it with you and to be able to sit here and discuss it with y'all. Please feel free to leave something in the comments if you have any specific plot info that you think is tied to the Void Within, or if you have any opinions on the things that I have rambled about in this video or the previous one. Thank y'all so much for hanging out and discussing Neopets with me, and hey, remember, if life ever gets too heavy, feel free to come on back here for another chill quest. Love you guys.